And when you first found out Austin was deaf, you worry about, he'll never hear your voice. He'll never hear you say you love him. And you think about all the things they can't do or won't be able to do or the disadvantages they may have in life. And somewhere in that process, it switches to you realize my kid is just like every other kid. And it just happened this week, even at Disney, we were in line and a lady said something to my wife about her, I think it was her nephew who's 22 years old, has had implants for like 20 years. And she kind of patted Stacy on the back and say, and don't worry, he graduated high school and has a job at the Home Depot. And we took that very condescending that she thought this kid's been a success in life because he got a high school diploma and he's working at Home Depot. Because she clearly feels like this kid is limited because he's deaf. And we don't even think that way anymore. We, at a minimum, treat him just like we treat our other boys and probably even expect more out of him because who he is and his personality that, I always kind of joke with Dr. Lusk, I would love it if Austin grows up to be a cochlear implant surgeon. How awesome would that be, So I think you switch somewhere from focusing on the negative and the bad things and what your child can't do or what experience they might not have to realizing that that's not what's important. That's not who he is. And anybody that knows Austin, deafness is not the first thing you think of when you think about Austin. You think about the energy, the independence. Again, we were just at Disney on the roller coasters. He wanted to ride by himself. He didn't want anybody to sit with him. He didn't want anybody to hold his hand. Very independent young fellow, and being deaf is not going to hold him back at all.
We met one staff member who's a mom for several deaf kids, and it was very comforting to know that her son was successful. He was going to college. He's made it that far. Mm-hmm. That was when I started to relax a little bit. It was still a daunting experience.
Overall, I also realized that there's people that are never going to accept a person with a disability, and it's okay. It's okay because that's how life is. Not everybody likes everybody. So you need to learn to live with that and just put it aside rather than asking myself why they don't like my child. But there's also good people. There's a lot of, there's teachers that I still am in contact with because they touched our lives in such a positive way that we will never forget it, and we are so grateful to them. But in that school time, during that transition time, they really made it smoother. They helped us understand our son's challenges and needs, and we worked together. We really made it work because we were partners.
As far as the emotional part of it, I will say, and this is just for me personally, but I've always tried to be the strong one for my wife, but that doesn't always work. And anybody that knows me very well or has heard me talk publicly about Austin when I speak to groups or whatever, I get very emotional and oftentimes I cry and probably sometimes even more than my wife. But we all deal with it differently. But I think it helped my wife and my other sons to see me emotional, not because I want a pity party or whatever, but because I feel very passionate about it. And I love my son more than I can express, just like I do my other boys. And it is emotional because as a parent, you want your kid to be perfect, whatever perfect may be. And I can see now that he is perfect just like he is, but I didn't see that up front. And I remember after he got his cochlear implants and his hearing was going great, the day we found out that he probably would never speak or have much speech was devastating. That was like, man, we just got kicked in the stomach again. And I had a meeting that night with a group of people, and I was a little bit late, and I sat down next to a lady who could tell that I had had a rough day, and I'd probably been crying because my eyes were red and whatnot. And her husband is deaf, and she passed me a note and said, what's wrong? And I said, we found out today that Austin may never speak. And she wrote back on her note, so? And my initial reaction was, how rude. And then it occurred to me, so what? That doesn't change who he is. Her husband is deaf and has a full-time job. I think he's worked at his job over 20 years, does very, very well, has 2 kids. They have a house just like every other person that lives the American dream. And that was a defining moment for me when, I was all devastated he wouldn't speak, and her response was, so. And it gave me a whole new perspective. So am I emotional about it, and do I get emotional? Absolutely. while I do try to be strong for my wife, and when we first found out, and she just, it was really, really hard. And I think that's normal for moms, again, because they want to blame themselves of what did they do while I was pregnant or whatever to cause it. And so in those times, I was always tried to be the strong one for her. But I didn't try to fake it and be strong 24/7, because that wouldn't have been real. And you know, some dads show more emotion than others. I'm one that shows a lot of emotion. But I think that's healthy. You got to get that out. You got to have somebody to talk to. Meeting other parents that had been there, done that, was huge for me. So I think you have to have a support group, whether it's formal or informal, but you got to have somebody you can talk to. It might be your spouse, but it might not be. But you just have to keep plugging away, and every day know that it's going to be okay.